So we can use StatCrunch in order to complete our hypothesis testing. The first example here that we're looking at is for proportions. So when you're working on Chapter 8, if you go under Question Help, one of your options is StatCrunch, and when you click on that, it will pop up. So first we read the problem. You have 880 households that you surveyed. 164 of them use email, and they want you to test the claim that more than 15%, and they give you the significance level. So more than 15%, because there's no equality, would attach to our alternative. So the only one that shows more than is F. So we click on that. Now the next part is the test statistic. So to get that without using tables, technology is actually going to be your friend here. We go in StatCrunch, you're going to choose Stat. You're going to come down here to Proportion. We're only doing one sample, and I have the summary. So the number of successes is the 164 people that use email out of the 880 households. You're doing a hypothesis test, so your sample proportion was 15%, and so you need this to be greater than, because you want this part to mirror what you've checked off over here. Once you've put those values in, nothing else here is relevant for us, so we're just going to click Compute, and notice that this table gives you your test statistic and your p-value. So watch the blue instructions. We only want 2 decimal places. And then the p-value to 3. And what's our conclusion? Well, our p-value is less than alpha, so there is sufficient evidence to support the claim, because when p-value is less than alpha, we reject the null. And then here it asks about the validity. No, it's not valid, I would say, because this was back in 1997. So that's how we can use StatCrunch to help us with the hypothesis testing for proportions. The second type of hypothesis testing that you will do deals with hypothesis testing about the mean. And the biggest thing about the mean is that you have 2 choices. You will either use a z-test or a t-test. If you do not know the population standard deviation, you will use a t-test. In this problem, they have number 1 songs, and they say that they must be no longer than 210 seconds. So they take a sample, and they get a mean and a standard deviation of that sample, and they give you the significance level. You can use the accompanying Minitab display, but since we don't use Minitab in this class, and you probably want the practice in using StatCrunch to do your own. At any rate, because I'm not given the population standard deviation, I would use a t-test. So here they want you to test the claim that the sample is from a population of songs with a mean greater than 210. Again, no equality, so that attaches to our alternative. And when you look at your choices, you have 2 where the mean is greater than 210, but our null needs to have an equality statement, so we would choose D. From there, we're going to find the test statistic. So again, under Question Help, you would open up StatCrunch. You would go into Stat, and now you're doing a t-test with 1 sample with the summary. So from that summary, they tell us that the sample mean is 236 seconds, and the sample standard deviation is 55.63 with a sample size of 40. Again, I need this piece right here to match what we marked in D. So our mean was 210, and our alternative is greater than. So we're going to click Compute, and we're going to get our test statistic and our p-value. So your test statistic here to 2 decimal places. Sorry. And then the p-value to 3 decimal places. And what would you conclude? Well, notice that your p-value is lower than your significance level. So that means that we reject the null, but our claim was about the alternative. So if we reject the null, then we are supporting the claim that the mean length is greater than 210. And what would you suggest? Well, it would suggest that the results that 236 is the best song length. No, you couldn't say that, right? Do not suggest that the advice of writing a song that must be longer than 210 is not sound advice. Maybe it does suggest that a song that must be no longer than 210 is not sound advice. So that's using StatCrunch for the t-test.